our next guest's work. Dave Weinberg writes about Harold Carmichael's a Hall of Fame player and person. Dave joins us now on the Pete Thompson Show. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing well, Pete. How are you? A little too cold for golf, but what are you going to do?
It was 23 on my car temperature this morning when I jumped in, and thank God for seat heaters. Let's put it that way.
You got that right.
So you write about Harold Carmichael. We'll get into this article, and I'm not sure if you heard what I said before the break. I was telling some Harold stories, and my favorite, and he is a super nice guy, but my favorite was the time in the 2004 season when I went to go get some footage of him warming up Donovan McNabb, and there weren't any other photographers or anybody else there, and Donovan was throwing some fastballs at him, and of course he's catching everything, and Donovan says something like, "Look at this guy shooting you, Harold. He doesn't know who you are," and I put the camera down and said, "Number 17, one of the best players of his era, should be in the Hall of Fame, catches everything, including the crappy passes you throw." And Donovan was like, stopped and put his hands on his hips. Harold was so excited. He put the football down, walked over, shook my hand, and said, "That's right, son. Thank you."
Yeah, that sounds like him. I'm not surprised.
So you write about the fact that it's a great lead. You said the running joke among the media contingent was what?
That he's the best receiver on the team, even though he's like 65 years old at the time.
Right, eligible for Medicare, hadn't played since '84. You know, I mean, you think about the guys that he warmed up: Donovan McNabb, Michael Vick, Kevin Cobb, Nick Foles. You know, and he still could do it, and he loved doing it.
Yeah, I'm not sure he can run like a deep post pattern now, and he's 70 years old. But you throw the ball anywhere near him, he said this ball's going to stick to his gloves like Velcro, and it's just amazing. I mean, and when you consider like the receivers that those guys were actually throwing to during games, it probably wasn't that far of a stretch to say that Howard was the best receiver on that team.
No doubt. So what are some of the stories you have of Harold, and maybe pass one or two along that, and I know you had a Jacksonville connection too that you like to bring up.
Yeah, my daughter actually is a Jacksonville University graduate, so Harold and I would always, reminisce about, Jacksonville. It's his hometown. I grew up went to Rains High School, just as Brian Dawkins and Lito Shepherd did. And he's very, very, very close to the town. He used to go back, or he still tries to go back at least once a summer to for this big barbecue that he hosts. He did it more often when his sister was still alive, because he would his sister lived in the family home up until her passing a couple of years ago. So, but Artis Gilmore, who probably, I don't know if anybody under 50 knows who he is, but us old school guys know that he was, a tremendous basketball player, led the Dolphins to the NCAA championship game back in 71, I think it was, when they lost to UCLA. But Howard and Artis are very good friends. He would always joke that he was still able to dunk over Artis once in a while. And that was one of his, he loved talking about Jacksonville and about going back and seeing his friends. And it's just a really special time for him.
Now, am I wrong, Dave, to blame Chip Kelly for when Harold left? Did that come during the Chip Kelly time?
Yes, it did. Yeah, he left in 2015, I guess, was Chip's final year. You can, blame Chip for a lot of stuff that went wrong, and he just never seemed to have the understanding of the connection that former players had with the franchise. It was, kind of one of those deals with Harold and a lot of other people that, once you're an Eagle forever, really. And, he kind of like soured Harold on some things. The connection just wasn't there. I don't know if he just didn't like him having him around or whatever, but Harold just decided to go in a different direction, although he's back now. Serving as an unofficial ambassador to the team. He's always around for the alumni events and, talking to younger players about, what it takes to make it in the NFL. So, yeah, it's good to have him back.
As he should be. I don't think I've ever told this story on the radio, but I was sitting next to Ron Jaworski at a charity event, and his phone buzzed, and he said, "Oh, bleep." And I said, "What?" And he said, "The Eagles are letting go of Harold Carmichael." And he was pissed, and he was especially mad at Jeffrey Lurie, because it obviously came from Chip Kelly and his people, but then he thought Jeffrey should have stood up for him. Well, that's all water over the bridge now, but Harold Carmichael goes into the Hall of Fame. Did you see Paul Domowich's story that Harold knew for 2 days, and it was only him, his wife, and Chuck Connors because he was watching The Rifleman?
Oh, no, I didn't see that. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, he knew for 2 days. He got the phone call. First, Harold thought somebody was pranking him or punking him from like a radio station or something. So it took him a while to fully accept the fact that the person on the other end of the line was a Hall of Fame official and was actually telling him you've made the Hall of Fame. But then when he started to buy that, then they said, oh, but you can't tell anybody because it's not going to come out until Wednesday. So he knew Monday night, and he couldn't even Dick Vermeil couldn't tell him until Wednesday.
Oh, wow. How about that? I'm a big fan of The Rifleman, by the way. You should. One of our favorite family stories is me doing the impersonation at the beginning of the show with the imaginary rifle.
So we've got Artis Gilmore and the Rifleman already in the first 7 minutes of Dave Weinberg. This is the kind of stuff you only get here on 97.3 ESPN each and every Saturday. Hey, let's talk about this football team a little bit, the current version. Oh, before we move on, were you sad that, or what was your thoughts on Drew Pearson not making it? So Harold gets in, Drew Pearson doesn't, but of course Drew Pearson had a party with cameras and everything like that. That probably wasn't the smartest move.
Yeah, there's quite a few guys who deserve to be in there that just aren't. I mean, you can probably start with Dick Vermeil as well. I mean, he was one of the guys who was on that. He was one of the finalists for this special class that was going in honor of the 100th anniversary of the NFL, and Dick Vermeil especially. I mean, when all the success he had with the Eagles and the Rams and the Chiefs, I'm just like, no disrespect to the guys who got in. I mean, Jimmy Johnson and Bill Cowher are certainly more than deserving. I mean, fantastic, legendary coaches, but it seems like you could find a spot for Dick Vermeil as well.
No doubt, and I thought the way that I thought it was very classy and nice the way that they presented Bill Cowher, told Bill Cowher, and told Jimmy Johnson. I mean, Jimmy Johnson was emotional how they did that on live TV. Plus, you saw all his Fox colleagues, how excited they were, including they cut back to the shot of Troy Aikman with the headset on. He wasn't even in the same spot, but he was choked up to see his coach go in.
Yeah, it was very, very touching. You're right. Yep.
So on the or off the field now, the Eagles have a couple of moves. First and foremost, they fired their defensive line coach, Philip Daniels, although John McMullen has tweeted out that they're probably going to promote Burke, the guy that's already in-house, sort of change his role a little bit. But then they've got some other moves that have come out, too. What was your thoughts when you see that they brought in this Graham Harrell for an interview? Will the Mike Leach, Texas Tech style of offense fit with the Eagles?
I guess it would. I guess it would. I mean, Doug Peterson does like to throw the ball, and I do think they need more of a balance than they showed in some cases. I mean, you need to be able to run the ball as well, obviously, and you have a dynamic young running back with Miles Sanders. You've got to find a way to get him the rock. So, but I would think when you come from college to the pros, I mean, even though you're like so-called set in your ways, the really good coaches are able to adapt to the talent around them. And I have a feeling that Graham Harrell haven't played in the NFL, albeit as a backup quarterback, but I think he knows the difference. They threw the ball at Texas Tech because that's the way that's what they do there. But I think that he'd be able to adapt to the talent around him, and I'm sure Doug would, make it pretty clear that you just can't throw the ball 50 times a game every game and expect to succeed. So, but it seems like a pretty bright offensive mind, has a lot of creativity. And I think he might be a good fit there, actually.
34 years old, former quarterback, oversaw the Trojans offense last season and their quarterback's coach. Plus, he spent time at North Texas and also spent time at Washington State. So that's
what I meant. I'm sorry, not Texas Tech. My mistake.
No, he played at Texas Tech. So, I mean, you're fine. There's no wrong answers here on the Pete Thompson Show, Dave.
Well, that's good.
At least not if I'm the one with the pen and I'm the one grading. Let's talk, too, about do you have any Connor Barwin stories you want to pass along? Because he's in the news as he's come back. And I don't know if you watched the show The Office, but I made a joke because Connor Barwin is going to be the assistant to GM Howie Roseman, not the assistant GM. People that watch The Office love Dwight Schrute and the whole title and all that stuff.
I don't watch The Office, but okay.
All right.
But anyway, I do think that I think Connor's an excellent addition. Just like we were talking about earlier about how former players too often are kind of like sent out to different paths or whatever. And some guys, to their credit, they kind of want to go in a different direction. But when you have a guy who has played for as long as he has and has that kind of knowledge and is so in love with the city, really, I mean, he fully embraced his time in Philadelphia as a player. Riding public transportation, establishing a concert for a charitable foundation, and just a great Philly guy who's actually from Detroit, but he really embraced his time, and I'm glad to see him back because I think he'll add a lot to the organization.
Yeah, no doubt. And you talk about how players are embraced by the organization now. I want to give a tip of the cap to Don Smolenski. I think that when Don got into his role fully and was able to do, he's really sort of recreated the culture of bringing alumni back and family back. And, just looping back to Harold Carmichael, I told a story that, not long after Harold had retired, our Eagles seats were in section 326 of the Vet, which would have been great seats for baseball. We were right behind home plate. In fact, for a period of time, we used to walk through the press entrance because they'd take your ticket there and you didn't have to go up in a long line then to come back down. You just walked right through. That ended when people threw off M80s and firecrackers on that Monday Night Football game that created Eagles Court. But these are all other stories.
I remember.
My story is this, that we would sit in those seats when I was in high school still, a junior or a senior, and I'd go to the games with my dad, and there'd come Harold Carmichael walking by. And I remember I always thought to myself, like, well, what's he doing with us? Like, that's Harold Carmichael. Why is he down here mixing amongst the people, and not realizing that Norman Brayman was so cheap that he didn't give tickets to former players, or they didn't have a lot of access. Like, if Harold Carmichael wanted to be around, that was all he could do at that point.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, he's you're right. Norman Brayman wasn't the most lovable owner, I guess. But when you go from Leonard Toast, who went above and beyond, perhaps too much for players and the Atlantic City casino industry as well. And then Norman Brayman was the anti Leonard. I mean, he was an astute businessman, but not the warmest guy, not the the most endearing guy. So and you saw that when it came time for Reggie White and Seth Joyner, Clyde Simmons, Eric Allen. And all those guys left rather than to stick with the Eagles just because of him mainly. So, I'm not surprised at that story at all. I'm not surprised to see Harold and probably every other former players having to sit in the stands.
Right at that point in time, and so we've come from there to, of course, now where they embrace and it's so interactive, the fan experience now, and what they try. Like at one point when I was covering the team on a regular basis from, say, 04 to 14. They'd bring, premium seat holders down in like a quadrant beforehand, but they didn't have like the Mike Trout seats at that point. They didn't have like the other seats in the other end. So now, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. You can be in the tunnel where they come out and all sort of added value that they've done in the last 4 or 5 years.
Sure. Oh, I think Jeffrey Lurie deserves a lot of credit for that as well. The fact that there was a big controversy a few years ago when Chuck Bednarik was alive, and the Eagles moved their training camp to Lehigh. Chuck lived right down the street. I can't remember the name of the town, but he always thought that the Eagles forgot about him after he retired and stepped away from the game, and he harbored a certain bitterness over the fact that they never invited him to any events. They never had him in for any functions. But Jeffrey went out of his way to mend that, fix that fence, so to speak, and invited Chuck to address the team during training camp for a number of years. And I thought that was a really nice gesture on Jeffrey's part, and it went a long way toward dealing with some ill will and some hard feelings that some of the players had, and it's great to see that they are kind of embracing that again.
Yeah, definitely. That was 06 that it seemed like they reconciled, and then, of course, not long after they reconciled, some stuff came out in the Allentown Morning Call, and poor Chuck had to say, "Oh, I wasn't talking about Reggie White. I meant to say Terrell Owens." Like he had, you never knew what you were going to get with Chuck, especially later in his life. If he definitely didn't have a filter.
Yeah, that's true.
Dave Weinberg's our guest here on the Pete Thompson Show on 97.3 ESPN. We're talking some time talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and their offseason moves, and also talking about pro football in general. So news comes out, Dave, that Jason Garrett is going to stay in the NFC East. He'll be the Giants' new offensive coordinator for first-year coach Joe Judge. Is that the kiss of death for the Giants, or a good move by them?
Actually, I think it's a good move. Jason might have been over his head as a head coach, although that's hard to tell with Jerry Jones as your boss. You really don't get a sense of how good a coach he really was or could have been. But he is a pretty bright offensive mind, and I think maybe not having that pressure of the head, being the head coach hanging over him, I think that might be a good move. It gives something, gives a person for Joe Judge to bounce ideas off of. I'm sure Jason will be pretty heavily involved in the game plan, and I actually think that's a pretty good move for New York.
So, Dave, my Saturday Twitter question is about this weekend's football, and we'll talk about Championship Sunday a little bit. Tennessee at Kansas City, Green Bay at San Francisco. I saw you. My question is, who do you like to advance to the Super Bowl and why? You had answered that on Twitter, but I'll let you answer that for our listeners as well.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to the Titans 49ers Super Bowl in a couple of weeks.
So you say the Titans. See, that's the thing. For whatever reason, I had a strange feeling that the Titans were going to pull off the upset last weekend, but how many times can you go to that well? And why do you have confidence in picking the Titans? Because I think you're one of the few.
Maybe so, but if you can go to New England and beat the Patriots, you're not the Patriots of old, that's pretty impressive. Then you go to Baltimore and you beat the number 1 seed. I just think that they're almost a team of destiny almost. They're not going to be fazed by going into Kansas City and playing. I think they did it earlier this year and actually beat the Chiefs. So it's not unfamiliar territory for them. And when you have Derrick Henry in that backfield, I think you can beat anybody. He just had an amazing late season run here. And I don't see any reason why it won't continue, because I don't think the Chiefs' run defense is very strong. So the longer they can keep Patrick Mahomes and company off the field, I think the better off they'll be. I really like the Titans' defense as well, so I just have a feeling they're going to pull off the upset.
So you've got Titans over Chiefs and 49ers over Packers. There are some people out there that think Aaron Rodgers could pull some magic out of a hat and pull off the upset.
He could. I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility, certainly. Aaron Rodgers is one of the all-time greats, but I just think the 49ers, much like the Titans, I think they're kind of a team of destiny as well. Their defense is just terrific, and they score just enough to, with Jimmy Garoppolo and company. I just have a feeling being at home, being the number 1 seed, and they earn that home field advantage for a reason. And I just think that the 49ers, after going through a few years of struggles there, I think it's nice to see them back on top, and I just think they're going to be in Miami with the Titans in a couple of weeks.
Dave Weinberg's our guest here on the Pete Thompson Show. Read his work on our website, 97.3 ESPN.com. His Extra Point column lives. Extra Points is right on our website at 97.3 ESPN.com. And follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19, where little nuggets pop up like, this developer was charged and faces 15 years in prison. I recognize this guy, Glenn Straub. That's our old buddy that wackadoo that was running around the Revel for a while and never opened it up.
Yeah, he had a lot of ideas, but none of them came to fruition. Just a very, eccentric kind of guy is probably the best way to put it. But he had a lot of ideas for Revel and some really out of the box stuff that he never fulfilled the promises that he made. He was talking about turning Bader Field into I think a race car track or something. I don't even remember what it was, but he's better off down in Florida.
Wasn't there one series where they're going to put some sort of rope maze or something outside? I mean, I would see this guy, Dave, sometimes, I was still in my late night PT mode, so there'd be some times at 4 or 4:30 or 5 in the morning, I'd see this guy come rolling in with a couple chippies on the arm, and I think like, dude, who are you? Like, this guy's weird.
Yeah, he's a different kind of guy, that's for sure.
All right, so you can find that kind of stuff on Twitter. Plus, I know that you have an opinion on this whole Major League Baseball situation and the sign stealing. I mean, what they thought was something small is now blown into something pretty expansive.
Yeah, I'm actually getting set to write about that for tomorrow. But it's I just think it's I think this is ridiculous. People have been stealing signs forever. Why is it okay if you do it by just like looking in from center field or from the dugout, but you can't use technology? That's just stupid to me. I don't understand, and I just think this is much ado about nothing. It's been going on for generations, and if you can figure out a way to guess what the pitcher's throwing, then more power to you. I don't understand the big deal.
Well, you saw the comments too from what was that? The pitcher that came out, the former White Sox pitcher, Blackjack, came out and said that the pitchers obviously are totally against it. I did see, though, now that makes sense why you'd retweet Jay Crawford too. He says give the pitching coach or manager a microphone, pitcher and catcher have a small earpiece.
Yeah, problem solved. Yep.
Well, there wouldn't be any cheating.
I don't know if you have time, but I have a real quick story about my old baseball coach.
Sure.
Jack Weeks from Lower Cape May. I played for him in the mid-'70s, early '70s. Anyway, but he had this. I would always get a kick. I was a pitcher, so I would always get a kick out of seeing the opposing players trying to guess what pitch I was going to throw. Standing on second base, looking in at the catcher, and the catcher would be throwing down all these, hand signals and fingers, 1, 2, 3, blah, 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 blah. And they could never figure it out. And the reason was because the hand signals had nothing to do with the pitch I was going to throw. The way it was determined was the way the catcher held his glove. Like if the catcher was down in his crouch and his catcher's mitt was pointing towards me, that meant throw a fastball. If it was like turned to the inside and his knee, that meant a curve. If it was pointed downward, that was a changeup or a forkball, whatever I threw at the time. And it was just a brilliant, it's simple but brilliant system, and nobody ever was able to figure it out.
I love it. The other stuff was all subterfuge and misdirection. Good. Keep looking at the figures. You'll never figure it out. Dave Weinberg telling some baseball stories with us. Let's close with a baseball thing. A colleague of mine at school yesterday came up and said, "Oh, Mike Trout, HGH, did you hear that? That's the rumor." And I see that
the biggest bunch of hooey I've ever heard in my life. My goodness.
He did get bigger from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah, because he works out like a maniac, for God's sake. And he's still, he was still back then, he's still a relatively young kid. I mean, everybody grows and gets stronger and bigger and faster. And, the HGH, that's just, no. If he would be the last person that would take that stuff.
And you said it was Scott Brocious, or it's come out that it was Scott Brocious' son that made the claim, and then,
right.
Then of course, the heat comes on, and he backed right up in the corner.
Right. It's, my brother's sister's uncle's girlfriend said that so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. It's freaking stupid.
So lend it credence is probably a problem. All right. So there's boxing tonight, too. We always like to slip a little of that in. The Cornflake, right? Thomas Lamanna, he's in action tonight at the Liacouras Center, Temple University, my old stomping grounds. Yeah.
Thomas has been he's been kind of inactive for a little while. He had a fight in 2018. That was a pretty decent one, but and then he went down to Mexico because he was frustrated with the lack of offers, and had a fight down there a couple months ago, like in August, I think it was. But he's at the point of his career now where he needs to have some sort of signature win if he really wants to get where he wants to go, which is a title shot or whatever. He's kind of lingering around the fringe of contenders, but he hasn't quite been able to break through. So he fights a guy named Jorge Cota today from Mexico, who's I think he's like 29-4 with 26 knockouts.
Yep.
This is his biggest test in several years now, and he's had a couple other fights that didn't turn out his way. I mean, speaking of Thomas, so if he can pull out this win, that'll at least put him in the discussion as far as title shots or whatever.
Dave Weinberg with us here on the Pete Thompson Show. He'll be with us each Saturday in the 9 o'clock hour. Read his work at 97.3 ESPN, Dave Weinberg, extrapoints.com.